Hello again. It's the second round. Now Finland is facing Iceland, and this time Erik Rönkä is resting, and Samson Musti is playing instead. But the top board is still Mikael Agopov, and let's actually flip the board. And he faced Hjorvar Steinn Gretarsson. He has been 2500 for many years now. This year, actually in the summer, he became 2600 for the first time, but he quickly dropped back where he belonged. And yeah, this game started with b3. Very interesting. This is like my favorite blitz opening. And yeah, it's not the greatest, but for blitz, it's fine. Quite often I play like e3, f4, something stupid, and try to get some kind of easy checkmate when they play knight e4 and black has castled. Anyway, the game started normally. Black didn't try to refute white's opening, and already black could play e5, get a big center. Instead, he just develops, and white doesn't want to allow e5 anymore, so he played d4. And knight e4. I don't think I've ever... I'm not sure if I've seen this position before. It's a kind of like a tricky opening, kind of interesting. Black is trying to use this pin to his advantage somehow. White doesn't care, he just castles. And black also doesn't find anything better than just castles. Because, for example, if queen b6, trying to put pressure on d4, white could just take, and bishop on g7 hacks. And e3. So e3 obviously protects d4. It's also a bit slow. Another move that has been played is knight e2. A bit faster. And one line goes like bishop f5, knight h4, takes, knight d4, takes, knight f5, and just rook b1. And queen g5 is an idea to take f5. So black plays e6. And white gets his pawn back. And yeah, I mean, it looks very equal. But computer says white is comfortably better. And I think it's just because there are some targets white can hit, like d6 is weak, and the black king is slightly weak. For example, if white plays like e4, he can get his bishop to a dangerous diagonal. And if black wants to protect the diagonal, he would have to play f5, then e6 would be weak, and so on. Anyway, that's one line that was possible. But yeah, like I said, e3 happened instead. And black pinned the knight to put maximum pressure on d4. And queen d3. Queen d3 is very strange. Because it doesn't protect the bishop. Like that would be my. I mean, I basically see two choices here. Either play queen c2 or queen c1. The bad thing with queen c2 is there are some knight b4 ideas. And actually here, black plays this very strange move f5. I find it strange because usually the bishop is not on g4 in these kind of positions. But yeah, it seems like black is actually already like basically has equalized already, and knight b4 seems to be an annoying idea. Computer actually gives already some kind of weird perpetual because if queen e2 seems like knight e5 would be some kind of problem. For example, h3. Black can even not take on h3, but just take here, and the problem is the knight on b1 has trouble developing. The knight on e4 is just a beast. So queen c1 instead is better, but it's also, you know, it's not attacking the knight, so it gives some extra options for black. And here usually the game continues like this. Knight is the d4 is hanging, so quite often white just takes on c6, takes on c5, and the problem white has is that the light squares are quite weak, and even the queen can already immediately black can consider getting his queen there. It's quite an interesting position. Maybe white is behind in development a little bit. So yeah, this whole line is quite interesting for black. Anyway, queen d3. I mean, I really just don't really understand this move. Like, why not play queen c2? It's very similar to queen d3. It attacks the knight, but it also defends the bishop. And this gives black an extra option. Instead of f5, he can play just like in the game, take on f3 and play knight g5. And now the problem is the bishop is not defended, so knight is coming to e6. So white thinks he has to take on c6 to defend d4. And another very strange move, f4. Like, it's just basically the knight wants to go to e6, so I don't really understand this f4 move. F4 move is usually like a defensive move. Like white is scared of getting checkmated, so he feels he has to push the knight away. But at the moment the queen is still on d8. Also, white would have a safer move, h4, basically doing the same thing, but keeping the king safer. Because after f4, knight e6, this is this is the famous wooden shield problem. The king is weak and the bishop is weak, so white is very close to being just busted. And anyway, he tries his best to develop, after having all these weaknesses. And c5, putting more pressure on d4 and d5. Just very natural moves and very effective. I mean, there's very little white can do here. He tried knight e5. One problem is like if, let's say, white just puts the rook on the d file. Problem is black can pin. And this is why we would really want to have the pawn on f2. Rook c8, and it's just it's gonna be a big pain in the butt. Some kind of great attack is coming. Should be some kind of checkmate. Queen e6. And all those moves were just very easy for black to find. Nothing complicated. Anyway, knight e5, he tries to close the diagonal. But the problem is he's once again moving the same piece again, so it's just not looking good. And black cashes in, wins the pawn. And here, white goes crazy and takes on f7. I'm not sure what he missed, because it seems like it's such a fantasy variation. It's also really against all kinds of logic that it would work. Like, it would really be amazing if this actually worked for white. Like, he's breaking many rules and somehow he would win the game with this stupid knight f7. Anyway, black of course took, and f5, bishop f6, g1, queen b6, just defending everything. And my guess is maybe white missed that the queen could go to a6, or maybe in his mind the bishop was still on g7, so he could check on f5 and win the queen. I'm not sure, but I think there was some kind of hallucination. And yeah, it's just like how to add more pressure on e6 seems impossible, and rook c8 is coming, and then black will have no problems. Anyway, a4, and instead of rook c8, black played rook b8. He just wants to trade as many pieces as possible, and it was important to put this rook, because if you put the other rook, white could take, and this comes with check. And in this case, if white takes, there's no check, and we get to just take on b8 and win the endgame very easily. So queen d5 was tried instead, and queen c8, and it's slightly uncomfortable for black. His pieces are in the back rank and he's just defending. Like, all his pieces are just defending. But white is lacking the firepower to continue the game. I think the computer suggested like some kind of g4 idea. It's kind of weird. g5. Maybe that was a better try. Instead, Gretarsson couldn't find really anything and just played bishop a3, putting some pressure on e7, and also in case like white puts the rook somewhere, black cannot play queen c5 to trade queens. Anyway, black just gets the rook out and defends the knight, so now the queen can move. And queen f5 looks dangerous, looks scary, but in reality there's nothing. And black just ignores. He's just gonna make a new queen. If white takes, we can just put the knight there, and all the light squares are covered. The bishop is defending everything, and white is just completely lost. Rook g4, another scary move that actually does nothing. So black can just choose his way to win. Check here. Once again, black can do anything. He chose bishop g7. And yeah, the game is just over. The rook is hanging, so he decided to protect it. But, you know, it's gonna be game over very soon. So he resigned here. For example, it's a kind of example variation. Knight f4 is quite nice. And we can even go to the checkmate just for fun. How the game could have ended. So yeah, pretty good game, I have to say, from black. Also, yeah, it's just nothing too complicated, except after knight f7. Knight f7 required some calculation, but even then he was just basically making like a lot of forcing moves. So like all these, black cannot do anything else than play queen a6, all these things. Just, yeah, pretty easy game. But yeah, he beat a pretty high rated player. So that's very nice. And that was the first game that ended. So that's very nice. And yeah, that's it for this game.